Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to this beautiful homecoming Sunday at St. John's. It is delightful to see you all for this special Sunday school and to welcome back to the congregation Ted Goins, Jr., who is the CEO of the Lutheran Services of the Carolinas, and we are just delighted that you are here with us this morning. So let us now begin.
Good morning. And I'm surprised, but he wouldn't know, but he didn't introduce me as Teddy Goins. But I still, I went through a phase where I didn't claim that, but now I appreciate it more. And when people call the office and ask for Teddy Goins, I know it's somebody that knows me for a long, long time. There's still a few of those around. It's just good to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Every time I come, I feel like it's Old Home Week. There are a few new faces in here that I don't know, so I'll explain. We moved here when I was 15. Leon Inslee, as a matter of fact, caught me up on the driver's ed because I was getting ready to turn 16, and he used to pick me up at like 6:30 in the morning and let me drive in the morning before school started so I could catch back up. And so that's kind of the way we started here. And of course, I was only here for about 3 years, and then I went off to college, and then I was only back occasionally after that. But it's always been, those were some formidable 3 years and formative 3 years along the way. And so I just always enjoy being back here. I appreciate all your cards and letters and prayers about Dad. We lost him last year. That's a little, I didn't think that'd be a problem this morning, but being home, it is. But after, at 93, and I just appreciate all those words and notes and prayers. Mom is just turned 93 back in July. Memory no good. But she's still Mom, and we all know her, and she still has that sweet smile that she's always had. I got to see that. I guess that was Friday before I left. Mary, my older sister, who never really lived here, or not hardly, but she sends her greetings. She's enjoying retirement. And John is still banking. He's still a banker so that he can continue to hunt and fish. That's why he's always worked his whole career. We often reminisce about the ponds and the dove hunts and hauling hay and just have the best memories here. And I emailed them Thursday or Friday and said, can I bring greetings from them? I didn't want to do it without their permission. And they said, Mary immediately responded, which is normal, yes, and to please remind Catherine Rich about putting together Dad's favorite hymns when y'all did a program here that I couldn't be at that day, and we sang those same hymns and worshiped with those hymns at his funeral just this last year. John said I could bring greetings from him, but only if I read the following paragraph. Yes, but only with the caveat that you confess publicly that you drove the church lawnmower too fast, locked your little brother out of the parsonage often, and made me eat grass after playing football, among other worse things. I still think you were responsible for the time capsule being unfindable all those years, but I can't prove that. St. John's is the best place in the world with some of the finest people ever. Please give them my best if it comes up. So it came up. So I just wanted to share that. And while I'm bringing greetings, I ran into Dan Miller the other night, Pastor Dan, and he said to tell everybody hello too. It's just, there are just so many connections to this congregation. I'm supposed to talk a little bit about Lutheran Services, so I guess I ought to get on with that a little bit. I started working for Lutheran Services, hard to believe, up here at Salisbury, when it was almost brand new, and that was 36. I've been with Lutheran Services 36 years. I did a little stint, 7 years in there with another organization, but I started up here at Salisbury in 1981 and got my administrator's license as a nursing home administrator, thanks to Lutheran Services Carolinas. And back then, we only had 3 facilities, and I could name them off, and many of you probably could too. You know, it was Hickory started, and then Albemarle, and this congregation, matter of fact, when we lived here, it kind of always oriented more to the Albemarle Lutheran home, and then Salisbury came along, and of course now I think seems like we orient more toward the Salisbury facility, in large part because you've got so many. We were just talking about all the different connections you've got up there. So many people that live up there that are part of this congregation or have connections to this congregation. And I dropped in because I had to bring greetings from Betty Banks, Richie, and Ms. Betty. I stopped in on her Friday, and she said to tell everybody hello along the way. And I know y'all been up to visit her a good bit too. You know, Lutheran Services started in 1960 with one little nursing home, and it seems like it was like about 40 beds up in Hickory. And that was because we got tired of when people wanted to be in a Lutheran home back then, they had to go all the way to White Rock, South Carolina, to the Lutheran homes of South Carolina, because that was all there was. And so we decided as a synod that we needed to take care of our own, and St. John's Lutheran Church was part of that. Y'all have always been part of everything that goes on in the church. And St. John's was part of that said, yes, we need to do that. And for a number of years, it was fine to have one Lutheran home in Hickory that could serve everybody that needed it. But of course, you know, times changed, and pretty soon Hickory was too far away to go. And people were saying we need to do something closer. And so that's when Albemarle came about, and then Salisbury, and since then we've just continued to grow and grow and grow. That one little nursing home has now become 9 skilled nursing facilities all across North Carolina, so from Wilmington to Asheville now. And I do have to remind you, you know, all of our senior services are still in North Carolina. There is still Lutheran Homes of South Carolina, and they're a wonderful sister organization to us, but they do their own thing down in South Carolina. But then 13 years ago, we merged Lutheran Services for the Aging, which was our senior services, with Lutheran Family Services. And many of you know Lutheran Family Services. It started in 1976. As a matter of fact, while we were here, Mom was on their first board, and I remember helping paint their first group home, which was in Concord. And I remember not doing it willingly. I just remember one Saturday morning, Mom rolled us out of bed and said, "Get your old clothes on. We're going to paint a house." And we didn't even know what we were going to paint at that point in time. But it was one of the first, I think it may have been the first group home that was owned by Lutheran Family Services. So, you know, this congregation and our family goes back certainly a long, long way with both of the ministries that then came together to make Lutheran Services Carolinas. And now we do a little bit of everything, and I love that. Sometimes it makes us kind of too scattered out and doing too many things, but the church has always served where the need was greatest. And that started with the nursing home in Hickory, but it became so many more things. And so today, that one little nursing home is now 9 nursing homes, a number of independent living retirement facilities, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Some independent living, assisted living along the way, along with some low-income housing around the state. And now we've gotten involved in this in a PACE program, and that's called Program for All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly. And I'm going to hit on that a little bit more in a few updates here in a little bit. And then on the child and family side, the old Lutheran Family Services side, we do everything from foster care to working with folks with developmental disabilities, mental health issues, substance abuse, refugee services and immigration services, disaster response, and now one of our newest programs is around substance abuse. You know, sadly, that's another one of those areas where the need is great. And I don't know any of us, or not many of us, don't know somebody that has had alcohol or drug issues, the fentanyl. I mean, most of us now know people that have died from, or know people in the community that have died from fentanyl overdoses. And so, again, that's the church responded to that and said, we need to be doing more substance abuse type work to support people that are having those type problems and all of our families. So we merged those two together in 2011, and I can't believe, and Dad certainly wouldn't believe that they let me touch that kind of money. But our budget, we just approved our budget for this coming year is $250 million. And I remember back I wasn't around, I wasn't doing the work then, but when the Lutheran home in Hickory first started, I think it cost $6.82 a day to live there. And you think what those numbers are now. Things have changed, some for the better, some not so much for the better in that regard. But our budget now, $250 million, and over 2,500 teammates across the Carolinas. And I didn't mention when I say across the Carolinas, our child and family work is across both states. So senior services is just in North Carolina because we leave the South Carolina Lutheran homes to do that work. But all of our child and family services work happens in both North and South Carolina. Our mission and vision really have never changed, and I always try to make sure I get that in there because we're real proud. We have kept Lutheran in our name because Lutheran is what started us back in 1960. And we still feel like, you know, some people say, well, you probably need to change your name to get with the times, and that may happen sometime after I retire. But we're proud of our heritage, and we feel like that is a great brand because sometimes down in Raleigh or down in Columbia, South Carolina, or in Washington, D.C., they don't even know us as Lutheran Services Carolinas. They just know us as the Lutherans. And I love that in Raleigh, they say, we need somebody to do this program, call the Lutherans. And they call us to say, can you do this, or would you consider doing this work? In South Carolina, they did that just recently with a foster care program. They said, call the Lutherans, they'll do it. And we were able to help the state and to start a new program at the very same time. But our mission, and we did change our mission statement a little bit when we merged the two together, just because we needed a mission statement that covered everything from adoptions to nursing homes. And it had to be short enough that I could remember it, because when I'm standing in front of groups, and you can see from my little page, you can look at it afterwards if you want to, I don't write these things down. And it gets me in trouble every once in a while. But our mission statement since 2011 to cover all that has been empowered by Christ. We walk together with all we serve. And we chose that, well, number one, we chose to keep empowered by Christ. Because, and again, some people said maybe you ought to take Christ out of your mission statement to be more broad. Well, we're here to serve. You don't have to be Lutheran, you don't have to be Christian to be served by Lutheran Services or to work for Lutheran Services. But we're very proud that we are a faith-based, church-based, Lutheran-based organization. And so we don't see that as a bad thing. And so we've kind of ignored the PR experts on that along the way so that we can continue to hold up Lutheran and to hold up Christian, empowered by Christ. And then we needed something, and that was walking together. How do you talk about, because if you tried to talk about everything that we do, you'd have a 2-page mission statement that I could not remember and that nobody would be able to understand. And so we just walk together with people. And that means that we can walk together with people with adopted babies who we can carry, but we're still walking together. We can walk beside somebody. Sometimes our residents are carrying us, to tell you the truth. So it works both ways, and it's just been a real mission statement that all of us as an organization could get around and as a church. And then our vision statement has not changed, to my knowledge, since the beginning of our time, and that's from John 10:10. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. We want abundant living for everybody that we serve and for everybody that's touched by Lutheran services. And that's about as Lutheran a thing, about as much of a St. John's thing as you could ever want to see is, or to talk about, is abundant living for everybody. We want that for everybody that we touch. So we've always served the church where the need is greatest. I did want to give you a little update on a few things, and then to open it up for questions, because I don't want to just be standing up here and talking. There may be some things that you'd like to talk about, or some needs that are out there in the communities that we need to consider along the way. So the first thing that we were just talking about sitting here before we started was Trinity Landing. We built our first new retirement center in a long, long time in Wilmington, just in the last couple years. We just opened it up probably 2 years ago, just got it filled up, and it's really just stabilizing now. That's called Trinity Landing. And again, some days I feel like I've been around for too long, because I was there after I got my administrator's license. Reverend Beard, who was the president of Lutheran Services, if y'all remember back then, he was nice enough to keep me on for a couple years just to give me a job, and plus there were only 4 people in our little corporate office, and he needed the help. So a lady in Wilmington, North Carolina, donated 30 acres of land to Lutheran Services to build some services for seniors down on her property, because they're not as lucky as we are up here in this area. You know, all the Lutheran services are between here and Hickory mostly. And the people in Wilmington, and the Lutheran church was growing there, they wanted to see some Lutheran services down there too. So she gave this property and said, I want this, we want something down here. And we were going to build a retirement center down there, and she gave that property in 1982. And I was there when she signed it over as a young employee that couldn't even hardly tie my tie. And we kept trying, but we were not able to pull that off for a number of reasons. Number one is back then Wilmington was a whole lot smaller than it is today. I remember the first time I went out on that property, it was a farm. There were cows grazing on the intercoastal waterway because it's on the water down there. But it was in the middle of nowhere. It was like 2 miles to the nearest water and sewer lines back then. And that was 2 years ago. And so it just was not usable back then, though we tried. The population wasn't there. We did market study after market study, and it said there's not enough people yet in that area. We bought 20 acres, Lutheran Services bought 20 acres to go with that, to make a nice rectangular piece of property out of all that. Well, it sat there all these years, and probably about 15 years ago, and in part because Ms. Crumpler, the lady that gave that land, I think was still haunting me because she was so adamant to see this done. She had long since passed, but she still had that dream, and she had instilled that dream in us. So about 15 years ago, we decided to start trying to develop that. And those things don't get developed overnight. It took all those years. We built a nursing home in there to be a part of that, and then we decided on how we were going to build the retirement center. So 40 years, almost to the day that she gave that property, we opened Trinity Landing in Wilmington, right on the intercoastal waterway. And it's now 208 apartments. The last time I asked, they had 5 empty apartments, and they were all spoken for. It was just a matter of when the people were going to move in. It was a $100 million project. It's the biggest thing we've ever done, and it's just a fabulous place for a couple different reasons. Number one is we have about 320 people live on that piece of property. So we are providing that abundant life, that abundant living for 300 more people every day. And I love that we continue to do that. The other reason, and we said this from the very beginning, is most everything that we do loses money. Because that's where the church is supposed to be. We don't make money off of refugee resettlement and foster care and Medicaid nursing homes, which we love. That's the passion that we have, and why the church asked us and created us to do all these things. We need something to help pay the bills, and we've been very open and honest with that. We have to be a ministry, but we also have to be a business at the same time, because if we're not both, we won't be around very long to do this. And frankly, Lutheran Services is one of the few not-for-profits like that that's left, because we have stayed true to that mission, but we've also balanced that ministry and that business side it's just a fact of life today, or you would not be in business. So the theory is that with the little bit of independent living that we have, and we need more to balance that out, and we're working on that, but at least it helps pay the bills for all the things that don't pay the bills. So if I can make a little bit of money at Wilmington that can help keep our foster care programs and our Medicaid nursing homes and our refugee resettlement programs, all those things going, then we've done a good day's work as a ministry and as an organization. So I know that's a little bit boring, but I think it's important that the church understands the need for both. Now, I really want to talk more about, and I'll be glad to answer any questions about any of that when we get to the question time. I did want to talk about a number of things that are in your backyard, because while you don't have anything sitting within sight of us right now, you've got Lutheran services all the way around you, and close enough that it really has worked very well for this congregation and for this community. But as I said, 2 of our original 3 facilities are in easy driving distance from here, between Salisbury and Albemarle. And Albemarle has continued to grow. You know, we added now, that building always struggled because it only had about 80 beds. It had about 72 nursing home beds and then a few assisted living beds. And we've now been able to add some more assisted living beds to that and get it to be a little over 100 beds, which again makes it a little bit more cost effective to operate, though it is still another one of those Medicaid nursing homes. And then of course Salisbury, built in 1976, and where Mom lives today, and we've put a lot of money into that building over the years to keep it looking good, even if it is a 1976 building. And of course we've surrounded it with all that beautiful independent living, cottages and apartments around the place. And of course, you know, we were talking earlier about all the people from this community and this congregation that are in around Trinity Oaks, either in the independent or including Mom that's up in the memory care unit. Other things that we have right here in the community, not just the 2 facilities here, Trinity Place and Trinity Oaks, but we have foster care. We do a lot of foster care work right here in this county. Now, y'all probably would never see that or know that unless you happen to be a foster parent. But we serve a good many children through foster families here in Cabarrus County. I mentioned PACE, and I don't want to get off on this because that would be a whole nother couple hours that you do not want. But PACE is a relatively new model, though it's now probably 25 years old, but it's newer in North Carolina. but it's a Medicare Advantage plan, though they don't talk about themselves in that way. But it covers 100% of the health care cost for Medicaid senior citizens. 100%. So it's a great program, but it includes a doctor's office, a day center where folks can come and stay during the day. It's a transportation company. They do all the transporting. So the people, it's like a nursing home without beds. So the people still stay at home at night, so they have to have enough support to be able to stay home at night, but they actually go to that facility 1 day a week or up to 5 days a week if they want to have that socialization and and to see the doctors and the physical therapist and all the other people. The reason I bring this up is because Lutheran Services now is involved in 4 of those with partners around this part of North Carolina. And just a few years ago, we bought the one in Charlotte, which also included, and I knew exactly where I wanted to be. It was Charlotte and Mecklenburg and Cabarrus County was the location for that. But they only had one site, and it was in this side of Charlotte, over on the plaza. So it's not far, but it's too far for people to be making that journey every day or every couple of days. So, but the market there is so big, and that's in part why we joined in this effort, is because we think we can have 3 or 4 PACE sites in that market area. So our next one is going to be right across the interstate at where Highway 29 crosses I-85. We've already bought the property, and we're already under development. We haven't started construction yet because we've got to jump through a few hoops yet with the county and the state. But it's a done deal. And there's a food line right there. I don't know if y'all know where that food line is. Right across the interstate. It's a Kannapolis address, but it's right across the interstate from Concord. And we hope to start construction on that just in the next couple of months. So that will really, again, be another service that's in your backyard, and that we can transport people, again, from all over Cabarrus, anywhere in Cabarrus County and certainly the edges of Mecklenburg County to have people at that. And I'll make sure that we keep you all informed on how that's developing and when that might open. We also are involved in one in Gastonia, and we just opened a second site in Shelby. So that's how we're going to do the same thing now from Charlotte, come over here to the Concord, Kannapolis area for that one. And then lastly, I'll mention our New Americans program. You know, we have served immigrants and refugees, this organization has, since 1979. Now, these are, and people get confused on the wording, and when we first got involved with Lutheran Services, with the Child and Family Services, I was a little bit surprised to get a few rocks thrown at me that we provide these services, but it was mostly because people didn't understand what we do. We only work with resettling legal refugees. Now the people that do this work don't like it when I say legal refugees, but I started saying that because people didn't understand. When people were hearing the word refugee, sometimes they were thinking about those people that are just showing up on our shores in an old boat and jumping out and running into our countryside and becoming, and kind of invading our country. That's a different issue and a different problem. The people that we serve are legal refugees, and they've got a better chance of getting struck by lightning than getting an opportunity to come to the United States. But they are sitting in refugee camps in other countries where they are being vetted. They've probably been there. In some cases, they've been there for 20 years, waiting on lightning to strike, waiting on the opportunity to have an abundant life. And these are people that have had they have been persecuted for their religion or their culture. They've been threatened with death. And the stories that we hear about people that have escaped, for instance, some of our folks recently have come from Afghanistan that have escaped the Taliban, and in most cases are people that had served our armed forces, that were our interpreters and our guides that showed our troops where to go. And so they're coming with like a flag officer's signature that, yes, this person was a guide for our troops, and please resettle them into the United States. So those are the kind of people that we're serving. And just in the last year or so, a little over a year, we opened an office, our now seventh New Americans Program office in Salisbury. So again, right up the road from you here. And we've resettled, I mean, they're very small numbers, but the last time I asked, we had resettled about 88 people, and some of those are family, most of those are families that might be husband and wife and 2 or 3 kids, but we've resettled those mostly into that either Salisbury or the China Grove area in that New Americans Program office there. And we actually even changed the name of it to New Americans because we are making New Americans. They just want a chance to do what the rest of us did, to come here with a dream to not be killed for their religious beliefs or because they have a different cultural belief, and to thrive in this country. And so they're doing very well. Our goal is to get them self-sufficient within like 6 months, which you can imagine some of these people, when they arrive at the airport, that's the first airplane they ever flew on. Sometimes they won't get on the elevator or the escalator because they've never seen one before. And yet we want them to be self-sufficient within 6 months. But like 80% of the time, we achieve that. So we help them with, schooling for their kids, get their kids in school, get them jobs, teach them English, and then they start on the American dream from there. And so it's great work. It's work that Mom started in, and that's where I kind of got that first taste of it, was back when she worked for Lutheran Family Services the first time around. And then lastly, on that New Americans Program conversation, we just bought the old parsonage from Haven Lutheran Church, which is right, I don't know if y'all know where that's at, but it's right in Salisbury. I mean, it's right in town. And so we just bought their old church parsonage because they hadn't used it in many, many years, and it was in terrible condition. But we've raised some funds to renovate that parsonage, and we're going to use that as a welcome house for these new Americans because when we get the call, we get a call that they're going to come in to Charlotte on an airplane or Greensboro on an airplane in 2 weeks, and you got a family of 4, and you've got to find an apartment and furnish that apartment and get everything ready to start that, and to surround them with a group of people. We usually use circles of welcome, churches or groups in communities that want to do this kind of work. But when they arrive, I mean, we've got to have a place for them that day. And so this welcome house will allow us to go ahead and have a home where they can go right in, and maybe they stay there for 2 weeks or 2 months until they get their feet on the ground, while we're also helping them find a more permanent place to live. And then when they move out, we'll move another one in. We've done this in Charleston and in Columbia, and we want to do this probably everywhere that we have offices, just so that we can make that welcome a little bit easier for them and for our staff also. Well, as usual, I've run my mouth for too long because it does run in the family, I think. But we've got about 9 minutes. I didn't do as bad as I could have, but I just wanted to open up because I've talked about a lot of different things. If anybody's got anything they want to talk about, whether it be family or Lutheran services or Trinity Landing or New Americans, anything that we've talked about, I'll just open it up for any discussion. I've got a few other things that I can talk about, but I'd rather be talking about what you want to hear about. Back here and then here. Yes, sir.
Have you had to add staff that speaks some of the different languages for the new Americans?
Yes, and you know, there are Lutherans do this work all over the country in different. I mean, there are like Global Refuge, which is our that used to be Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, is the national organization. I'm glad you said that to remind me to give them a big shout out too. They changed their name recently to Global Refuge. Global Refuge is the group that actually gets those names, those people from the State Department, and then they dole them out to about 30 of us affiliates across the country. So they'll say, all right, I've got a family of 4 from the Congo, who can take them? And it's like playing cards. They dole them out, you know, to those of us that have space and can do that. Well, you know, there are some bigger cities and bigger areas where there's lots of people that speak lots of languages, like New York, for example. But down here, you know, we don't have that luxury or that ability very much. So yes, we have struggled, especially with more people, you know, all the people that we rescued from Afghanistan, because they might speak one of 3 different languages, none of which are very common around here. So yes, we have, but we've been very fortunate to find former refugees, and especially those that came over that had worked with our troops all those years. They know the language. They know English, and they know the language from their country. And so then they come to work for us and can be those translators. The other thing I got to tell you is technology. Google Translate has saved our lives on more than one occasion because there's not always a translator around. Now we're fortunate enough to even have a service that we can call them and really FaceTime with a client and with somebody that might be in Chicago or San Francisco or New York that can speak their language. It's hard because it's a 3-way conversation, and we don't always get it right, and Google Translate doesn't always get it right, but it gets the job done. So yes, to that and that's one of our biggest needs, because we're taking people from all over the world, and there's lots of languages out there that we've really never even heard of especially around here. But thank you for that. Yes, ma'am. Okay, PACE, and again, this is a little bit old-fashioned because it's 25 years old now when they created that name, and the name's a little bit out of date, but it's Program for All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly. And the elderly is the word that I don't particularly like because that's kind of gotten out of vogue, but it's the name of the program. But if you Google that, Program for All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly, you will find more stuff on the internet than you ever wanted to learn about PACE. But it is a wonderful model. I love it because it keeps people at home. You know, and we all want to stay in our home as long as we can. And so it's a way to keep people at home that otherwise would end up in one of our facilities. And some people have said, why are you doing that? Aren't you cutting off your nose to spite your face? I don't want anybody that doesn't need to be in one of our facilities. If they can be at home and that's where they want to be, that's where they ought to be. Maybe one, yes, ma'am. Well, those refugee, she asked about the difference between refugee and migrant. You know, migrant is a word that has, and a lot of these words are kind of used interchangeably, but migrant is kind of that umbrella word that covers everybody. So, for instance, so they're not coming here as refugees through the federal government. They may be coming in some other way. I'll give you a great example. In all of our New Americans Program offices, we're getting people that just walk in the door, in all 7 of our offices, that just walk in the door and say, I am a Ukrainian citizen. I had to flee my country, and I need help. And there is a federal program that we can use to help that Ukrainian who is not coming as a refugee, because a refugee, we're actually paying, well, they borrow the money from the federal government, but they're actually paying their own way to this country to come to live here and live with us. But this Ukrainian might have just got on an airplane in Poland, because he can legally do that, or she, and flew to the United States and then says, I would like help. I love the fact that there's a huge, not huge, but there's a big Ukrainian population in Greenville, South Carolina. Now you say, why Greenville? Well, it's because of Lutheran services. We resettled them there 20 years ago when Russia took over Crimea in the first big war, and people left and ended up coming to us, and we resettled them there, and they have made a beautiful home for that community that now stretches all the way up to Asheville. So there are Ukrainians all the way from Greenville to Asheville that come because of you, because of Lutheran services. Same thing, I was just hearing a story this week about a Cuban family that has arrived here, and they didn't come as refugees. They're all migrants under that umbrella, but in this case, they immigrated here from Cuba. Well, actually, they escaped Cuba, and now they're coming to the United States, and the United States has a program for Cuban exiles to join the United States too. So that's why I use the terms immigration and refugee, but they're all migrants. They're all migrating from one place to another. I think I got 2 minutes. Anything else? It's just always a pleasure to be here. I love to share the news of Lutheran Services Carolinas because you all started it, and it's fun, and I could talk about it all day, as you can tell. But it's always fun to be back here with family, and this place has meant so much to us all these years. So thank you for letting me be here, and I guess we'll prepare for worship. Thanks. Mm-hmm.